Good morning. Good morning. It's Tuesday, January 8th, 2019. Um, going to take a look at the ES again this morning and a little early today. Um, that's good and bad. The closer I am to market opening, the more accurate things are going to be as far as early trades. But I think there's enough things to look at here to get some edges. Let's start with the daily chart. This is a 24-hour chart. You can see that we're higher overnight. We're trading right now at 68.75 here. We've been trucking on up here. Let's just look over to the regular trading hours. Double check, make sure that's what those set on there. Yeah. Okay. So first thing I want to point out and notice here is this situation right here. Higher highs, higher lows, lower volume. About 3/4 the amount of volume from the other day. So, lots of different ways to interpret that, but a little bit of divergence there. So, and based on other things I'm reading, that the bulls have the edge today so far, being higher in the overnight. That momentum may be a problem. Now, there's some other things that might contribute to the upside. So all of this is just kind of dialing in for me. I'm playing it point by point, tick by tick, minute by minute. I'm not trying to get a position going and then write it out for the day, try to make a biased call. Really depends for me and where we open. So I'm going to erase this right now. Keep that there. The only other thing I want to take away from this chart is that, well, there's two things. One, this looks like a viable head and shoulders pattern that worked out. Now, the purple line would be a foreseeable destination based on some techniques, okay? Another one would be, now this volume is 30 days. This is the VPOC, volume point of control for 30 days up here at, see, I'd say about 70, okay? But we're still below 2,600, which is possibly a psychological number. Another important thing here is this. So we're in this range. You can see all this volume here. So this is a balance area. Really looks like the high in the overnight is kind of up there. So are we going to be able to get this low volume node? I don't know. We'll see. I'm going to take that off. And once again, this might seem kind of dry and boring here because there's not really a lot of workable information. It's just sort of getting a lay of the land. All right, let's move over to profile. This is where it gets really scary. Excuse me, really interesting. All right, so since I've been kind of cranking these videos out the past couple weeks, and it looks like I had not done any videos since, might have done one early 2018, but I kind of looked back the other day. I guess I'd have to do it again. I think it was like December was the first of I'd done any videos this entire year. At any rate, this gray area, you can see it's bigger. This one and this one are much bigger than what you might have been seeing. I've had a couple bigger ones. Now these were red yesterday. I did adjust them a little bit, but they kind of are in the same areas, and I turned them into areas to look to buy from. The chart's getting kind of cluttered now, but and I'll clean it up again, if we get back down there and readjust some things. But if we happen to just have a liquidation move, then I want to be, especially if we start one-time framing down, if we start trending down, these are all going to be potential areas where some energy gets exchanged, and I want to watch what happens. So we scroll back up to the top where we are. So we've been up here quite a while. I've been kind of watching this for a while this morning as I was doing the work. And we were down and around in here a little bit, but below this yellow line. Now what the yellow line is, it's a value area high from yesterday. So I'm treating this little area between yesterday's high and the value area high as in the overnight VPOC. Okay, you can see how this all is confluent together to be a important thing. In fact, this whole little area right here, I could just say this is a area to watch for, reversals, things like that. But the gray areas, what I was talking about, was is a balance area to where once we're in balance, we might, if you have an entry technique, this 7250 to 6850, it's not very big, a 4-point range. You might find some kind of entry to kind of get to the other side of balance, which is exactly what happened. It went up here earlier when I drew this. This was just a poor high. Now it's a triple poor high, which it can still get taken out, but I have my position on triple poor highs is that, or more, they're not necessarily weak, porous, I guess you'd say. There's a good chance that they're getting, buyers are getting stuffed. That's the term I like to use, is that, they're not getting anywhere when they get up there. You can see up right where it says ONH at 2572, there's a big line of people shorting that, or, in the book. All right, so that's just what I'm just explaining what the gray areas are. So if we dip below it, come back in, and it starts to move up, if you're looking at a minute chart, tick chart, something like that, you could find a way to enter based on momentum, based on reversions, various techniques, which if I've talked about getting putting a room together, something very simple, probably just share it on Google Hangouts, and somebody could test it out for a few days. And if you like it, if it's worth something to you, then, something very, very cheaper than anywhere else. Let me put it that way. So thinking about doing that, and then I might share some techniques, which I paid dearly for, to learn, to modify, to tweak, to play with, to get experience with, I hesitate to say master. I mean, I don't consider myself a master of anything in this business yet, because it changes all the time, and I'm still learning. Every day can be a learning experience. So right now we have some news coming out at 8:30 in 2 minutes. We'll see what happens. It's not like one of the market mover ones, but on that note, with news, we've got news at 8:30, then at 8:55 U.S. news anyway. Some other things I read tell me that typically we would have leaks from these trade talks going on in Beijing, and nothing's really come out yet, and that could be market moving stuff. So if you listen to MSNBC, or if you have some kind of live news source, whether it's Twitter or some kind of update in your software, you might want to watch out for that. So if you see a little alert, or hear that news alert, dramatic sound they make on TV or whatever, take a look quick, or get your finger on the button to get out of a trade or whatnot, because things could get hairy for a minute. Just my opinion. I could be wrong. Personally, I don't always follow stuff like that. I don't, I just watch the screens, and that tells me what's happening. There's sudden jerky moves, then, I play that accordingly, whether it's it's to maintain my position of no position, or get out of a position. So anyway, the yellow line is the value area high here. And I am looking at this as a go, no go area for bullishness or bearishness. Now, true to form, we'll probably be on both sides of this quite a bit to start. What does that mean going forward? Well, there are a lot of outstanding lows here that they could, the market could come back down through, and get some acceleration get some acceleration below those. All right, there's our news. Let's see what happens here. Right here's a potential long as this W opened up. Again, we did have news. There's some sellers holding it here. I wouldn't necessarily just take this. It could be an open drive up to the R1, back up to the overnight high. I would look for at least to maybe 71. And again, it could go down from here, of course, but we did open inside this balance area. There we go. And somebody could take a shot and have very low risk if they wanted to. But that's entering off the profile chart, which I would say go over to a 1-minute chart or something like that, and look for some things. So here, okay, I'm kind of getting a little long here. So yeah, they had a nice little trend line here. This could have been a reason to get in. Let me just do this real quick. So that's 68.50 to 72.50. I'm gonna throw that on here. 68.50, 72.50. So I'm a little bit all over the place, but I've got time. It's early days here. So we're kind of right on back and forth of this line. Is this gonna hold? I don't know. Right now, I'd want to maybe consider getting out because it hadn't done anything. Sometimes there's trades that you take that if it doesn't go your way right away, you might want to just bail out, take a little bit of a hit, and other trades sometimes it's hard to get the timing right, and you want to let it cook a little bit. You let it cook, and all right. So back to we might dip below a tick or two, and then resume to the upside here, but this area is very important from yesterday's high down to the value area high. We've got the overnight VPOC in there. So, I could see even in this case, if it does come down, then being traded off the high or the VPOC, this obviously this seems a little bit of a, this is a little bit more aggressive right here. The higher lighted blue, this is more conservative. You could probably get a bounce off of all or both of them. The thing is, if you get in here, it may still drive down to here before you get that bounce. You're going to take a little heat. And if it keeps going, you're going to have to risk a lot more up here. All right. I think I need a little more coffee. Okay. This area I like a lot better. So if we get down here below P, you got a potential stopping point with the TPOC and the overnight here. You've got the VPOC here. In fact, I would want to put right now, I would want to put a little area here to watch. We do get in here, you're gonna run into, if you looked at this 3-dimensionally, you might want to consider this a plane and this like a hill, a mountain. We may get through it and may continue through it, but this may be where it goes sideways for a while or retraces back up a little bit, that kind of thing. Again, thinking on a lower time frame chart, it's hard to see it unless you're visualizing it in a 30-minute bar chart. So that's something. But if we do get in here, it might look for an entry to drift to the downside. It could rotate in here a while. Same thing coming up from the bottom. So that's why the gray area is not really necessarily like the blue, and the blue areas are going to be ones to look to get long. The red are going to be looking to get short. But the gray areas are you're going from one side to the other. Especially if you test outside and come back in, that's the idea. That's what I'm trying to say. We've got a couple more things to talk about here. So you got the overnight low, which would go right into yesterday's TPOC and this distribution here. So you could even make this a little bit of a, a little bit brighter. It's kind of a more aggressive one to get in. But again, you're running the risk of them. Usually when the market gets down by a pivot point, they come down to it within a tick or two. And these days, again, permeate a little bit. So if you get down here, sometimes it's good to think of these common targets as magnets. The market will want to gravitate to them, whether it's an R1 or an S1 or something like that. So, and again, if we're below the yellow line, one of the things you want to look for is the 80% rule to the downside. Don't know what that is, look it up. There's a couple different ways people define it. But basically, if you're well, you can look it up. If you're inside the value area from the prior day and you open up in there, and if you're outside of it and trade into it, then open up in a new TPO and you don't trade back outside of it, you're potentially got a pretty good odds of going to the other side of value, which is the same idea as this, the gray area. So you're entering a balance area, and the market is going to make its way to the other side of balance and see if there's any interest below there. If not, and it just goes back and forth. That's what markets do, is they auction up and auction down. Excuse me. Okay, so we've got all these single prints in C and B from yesterday. There's the way the market's been trading here, there's a good chance we could take all this back. One thing I noticed that was never taken care of yesterday, and yesterday I had thought, I never got back on and talked about it, but I had wondered that we might not roll over. And what I mean by roll over, I mean we come back down and take out the low, the downside. This to me is, their odds are pretty good this might get revisited. Okay, and it could be today. You got to be careful of the whole immediacy thing. Could be today, could be later this week, or it could be a month from now. But when we do get back down through here, this is something that's open drive. That's something I kind of got to carry forward, keep it in the back of my mind. So the other thing I want to point out is that the low of yesterday, it's a very good low. Why is it so big? Okay, just a moment. All right, well, just leave it at that. This low was never revisited, and then neither was the overnight low from, let's see, Sunday to Monday. Okay, so there's that. So those are things that are standing out in my mind as potential. I don't like when this jumps like this. Where were we? Okay. And then we've got all this. Okay. So there are people that are still long from all the way up in here. And then we've got these lows here. Now, why are these important? I have my own ideas of what the dynamics are on this, coming to get stops or whatnot, or the people that are long below here, they're taking off, and it brings the market. They're like closing out their positions, and it's bringing the market back down. I don't know. Somebody could explain it to me, but I'll tell you, I just noticed that kind of thing happens. It's like these lows get taken out eventually, especially if they're open drives. Now that's to the downside. Okay, and you got all these single prints here. Typically it's going to be emotionally driven, that kind of thing. So once dynamics change, people get out of the market, it comes back down. All right. So here's another low, never revisited yet. So we got a couple in a row. Then you've got all this in the overnight. Look at, this is really, this is really just not a healthy looking profile structural. You got all these little rough edges, okay? And that's often an indicator of emotional trading. And then you've got this overnight low. It's not been repaired. Okay, excuse me. I do not like to use that word. The market's not broken. If you don't repair something, it's not broken. It's a stupid word. I picked it up somewhere. Wish I never would have. Anyway, so there's all that to the downside. Now, when will that happen? Let's go back to the daily chart. It's times like this, it's good for me to go back and look at a daily chart. So what do we see happening here? Well, there's a couple other concepts that I like to use. So we've got this, it's one time framing up here on the daily and several days ago. I'm going to copy and move this. There we go. I'll put it from this low to up here. Okay. So for me, right here is another potential place to get to. Now, why would that be? Well, there's it's a concept called equality. So this retracement, pullback, or whatever you want to call it, there's a good chance that this will be equidistant to this little zigzag. So that's something to watch for. So again, are we looking for a move to the upside? Well, this pattern would indicate we are. The fact we had not reached equality would indicate we are. Let me do something else here. Let me put this on here. And to me, this indicates this is an area we're going to get to, this 127.2. Now, for those of you who have a problem with Fibonacci, then I'm not for you. Okay. In my opinion, if you've not learned a few things about it, and it's kind of easy to use with just a couple little things can help you a great deal. You don't have to master it totally. Just master one or two little ideas, like a 618, retracement, or this 127.2 extension. Okay, well, I'm not trying to evangelize it. I'm just saying, if it's not for you, then I don't sit and talk about it all day long. It's not the only way. Like, there's a gal who there's several people who trade. That's what they use mainly. But you just need to be forewarned that if you're going to roll your eyes when you hear me talk about something like this, then I don't want you around, because you're not smart enough for me. Okay. So at any rate, let's go to the upside. I could probably pull this back together. All right. So once we get up here, excuse me. All right, this blue line right here. Now I could try to scroll back, but this jumps all around. This is a poor high from 1219. So if you go back and look at the highs back on, let's see, this must be it right here. Yeah, I think this is it right here. Let me double check. 1219, yeah. This high right here is a poor high. I say, seems pretty good odds we might come back through there at some point. Today, I don't know. We could come back down again. We could have a long liquidation back down to this little trend line that proved to be sort of important. Well, the neckline, I'm sorry, that's not the one I was thinking of. There was another one I drew on the underside that was important. This neckline here could still play out to be important. Before we go higher, we may get some retracement back. Well, what happened to your equality and extension? It's a guide. It's just a technique. It's a tool. It doesn't mean everything always works like that. So, yeah, that's where we're at with that. The upside, you've got a naked TPOC up here. Let's see. You got a naked TPOC right here. And the R2, that's not, well, that is kind of far, I guess. So, all right, we've taken out the poor high. Let's see how our long would have worked out. All right, well, it didn't open drive up, and it hesitated long enough that you had to really consider whether you want to stay long. But as I had said, you could get long down here. It might be a little bit better. That's exactly how it worked out. Now, typically I do this a lot closer to the open, but the overnight, the Globex is no different. Well, it's a little different, but it's not that different. So there's your long. Beautiful. You could be done already for today if you were taking that. Possibly. Depends on what you trade, what you're, everybody's different. All right. So you've had enough of a look to see what these areas are. And I'm not necessarily reading them off by the numbers, but you can pause your video or whatever. And if you're interested in, supplementing your own analysis, and I emphasize that greatly, is, do your own homework. I mean, if you're watching my video, no doubt you are probably a pretty experienced trader and you do that, but you might be interested in some of the ways that I'm looking at it. And if you are, hey, you know what? You're welcome to snurch it and throw it on there. And again, it doesn't mean you get down to an area. I gotta stop saying certain things, wasting time. You don't get down to a certain area and you just buy it. This is just a place that you need to be a heads up that this is where it might turn around. You might get pullback, retracement, or when you get under it, that's going to tell you something else too. So like this area, maybe it should slow down, but if there's nobody there buying, something's changed. And what it means is that it may flip the other direction. So you could maybe trade against to the downside, you see. So, all right. I think that's all I got for the ES. I actually have time to do a different market this morning, but we'll just keep it simple. Um, you know. All right. Well, I'll be back later probably.